Arsenal are pushing to sign Sporting striker Viktor Gyokeres, with talks understood to be at an advanced stage. Yeah, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Bringing in a striker has been a primary focus for Arsenal this summer. We'll take a look at what fee it could take to get the deal done. Now, as Martin Zubendi completes his £51 million move from Real Sociedad, we'll reveal the key role Mikel Arteta played in convincing the midfielder to join Arsenal. Across North London, Spurs are in talks with West Ham United over a deal to sign Mohamed Cudis, with the winger making it clear he wants the move. And while 5 players inform Manchester United they want to leave the club, we'll have the latest on Bryan Mbeumo's potential move to Old Trafford. Yeah, welcome along to Mark McAdam. Mark, there is only one place to start. Yeah. Arsenal's search for a striker. How close are they to getting it over the line?
It feels like, for the first time in a number of windows, Arsenal fans are finally going to get to see the magic number 9 walk through the door at the Emirates. It's been the position that they've been coveting. It's the position they've been desperate for the club to go and action. And it feels like, finally, we can start to talk about this deal getting closer. Now, how close is the question? We know that Arsenal are pushing hard and they are in advanced talks at the moment. There's been no club-to-club agreement between Sporting and Arsenal, but the conversation continues between the two football clubs. There are some reports out there suggesting that Viktor Gyokeres has told his friends, yeah, I'm only interested in Arsenal. Arsenal's a team for me, Arsenal's a team I want, and that he's also made that quite clear to the hierarchy at Sporting Lisbon. Sporting, as far as they're concerned, I guess, Darmesh, they know they've pretty much lost the player. He's played as many games as he's going to play at Lisbon, and what an incredible 2 years it's been. 97 goals in 102 appearances. It is simply phenomenal, hence why now we're talking about this potential move. Maybe that celebration will be seen in the Premier League not too far away.
Yeah, just to add to that, Mark, Arsenal thought to be encouraged by the player's desire to join. Personal terms not expected to be a problem, but in a fresh development, Sporting have given Gyökeres permission to delay his return for pre-season. Now, we know pre-season gets underway for a lot of clubs, not only in the Premier League, but around Europe tomorrow. Yeah. That's a week after some of his teammates. That's when he was due back. So some of them have actually gone back a week ago, but he's now been given until Friday as these talks with Arsenal progress. And there is no certainty, given what you've just been saying, that he's going to return at all. Now, you did say, despite these talks being advanced, there's no club-to-club agreement just yet. What is it going to take for there to be this club-to-club agreement?
Well, this feels like a little bit of a grey area. Now, normally when we go into transfer negotiations and we're talking about them, we've got a bit of an idea about what the price is the selling club are looking for. Normally it's the first question you'll ask your contacts. OK, fine, but how much is it going to cost to get this deal done? Now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because there were rumoured reports that when Viktor Gyokeres went to Sporting Lisbon from Championship side Coventry, there was a release clause inserted into that contract that was €100 million, which is around £80 million. Now, he's 27 years old, and even the president of Sporting, Federico Varandas, has come out and said, look, we know we're not going to get £80 million for a 27-year-old striker. No one from Portugal is going to leave for that kind of money. So therefore, we have to be sensible, and we have to understand that actually, if we're going to recoup back some of the cash we invested and get this kind of sum into the club, we're going to have to soften our approach on this rumoured release clause. Now, there were suggestions it was around £59 million.
Yeah, because there was that rumour, wasn't there, that Viktor Gyökeres had some sort of agreement with Sporting that he could leave for that amount of money.
Yeah, but gentlemen's agreements in football, rarely do they ever seem to work out. You hear about these things, and you've probably heard about them a number of times over the years between certain players and certain owners, but very often the agreement is always not quite on the same page. Now, we did say that we understood it to be 59 million. However, Federico Varandas has come out and said there's absolutely no chance that Viktor Gyokeres will be leaving for £59 million in this window. So between 80 million, the release clause, and 59 million, the rumoured release clause, you'd imagine the fee that Arsenal would have to pay will be somewhere in between. you get that feeling that that's where they're going to be. It's going to be probably around 70 million, whether that's inclusive of add-ons or plus some add-ons. It's going to have to be that kind of figure to get Viktor Gyokeres out of Sporting Lisbon and into North London.
Look, we have been speaking about this very topic for so many transfer windows, haven't we? It has been a primary focus for Arsenal to bring in a striker in this transfer window. They have explored the conditions of a deal for a number of players, most notably RB Leipzig's Benjamin Sesko. But when you look at those two players, they're different profiles and different ages, aren't they? Viktor Gyokeres, you could argue, more of the finished article. Does Benjamin Sesko perhaps have the higher ceiling? But what we're hearing now is that the focus seems to be edging towards Viktor Gyokeres as opposed to Sesko.
It felt like they had two names on their list. Now, there probably would have been 5 or 6. Arsenal do a lot of due diligence. They like to scour the market and they know that they have to sign top quality. But it always felt like from the start of this window, they had 2 players in mind for that number 9 position. Like you say, Benjamin Sesko, someone that's been in the RB group for a number of seasons and has been watched at times by Real Madrid. You know, he's been on the radar of a number of the big European clubs as they look to strengthen through the middle. It's probably safe to say his development and trajectory hasn't been as progressive as a lot of the clubs expected, but he's still a talented player. But he's 22 years old and probably not quite Premier League ready just yet. But like you rightly say, probably will be in time. Whereas Viktor Gyokeres absolutely is Premier League ready in my mind. He's like an oven-ready product. He's just scored 97 goals in 102 appearances. I think the biggest thing that he'll bring that perhaps other players won't is the physicality. He understands the Premier League. He understands English football. I first came across him when he was a young player at Brighton. Didn't play a great deal of first-team matches. Was given his debut by Chris Hughton, but then went out on loan. And it was where he was on loan at Coventry where he really excelled. And under Mark Robins, developed into that ruthless centre-forward, someone that could do everything you'd want from a number 9. And not only score and finish, but he could create his own goals as well. He'd drop into little pockets of space. He'd come into his own half at times, but he'd be prepared to get out wide. He'd be prepared to do the dirty work. And then he had the ability to finish with ease and not just simple finishes. You know, he'd stick it in the bottom corner, he'd stick it in the top corner. He was good aerially. He had everything. And this is where I think this potential deal certainly feels like it could be the right one and the one that Arsenal fans are crying out for.
Oven ready, I like that. It looks like Arsenal are cooking.
I sound like Boris Johnson, don't I? I don't know if that's a good thing.
Not quite sure how to follow that one. But listen, we've heard the fans, we've seen social media. Now, how much attention you should pay to social media, I don't know. But it has been the theme. The fans have been baying and asking and demanding that Arsenal sign a striker. The fact that Arsenal have taken their time over the past few windows and done due diligence over a number of transfer windows, including in January when they were looking at both Sesko and Gyökeres, and in this transfer window with both of those players as well. Does that kind of highlight how absolutely vital it is that Arsenal get this right and the importance of this decision with, in particular, this position?
It's probably the most difficult position to recruit for. And you speak to sporting directors up and down the country, across Europe and in the Premier League, and what's the one thing they say that is the difficult thing to find?
Number 9.
Number 9. And it's also the most expensive as well. So you have to get it right. If you're spending 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 million in Harry Kane's case on that number 9, he has to be able to come into the club and develop almost straight away and have an impact on that first team. This is the most challenging position to recruit for. And for a team like Arsenal, you're not trying to find a striker that will get you 15 goals and get you in the top 4. You're trying to find a striker that will get you 25 plus goals and someone that will spearhead you to the Premier League title, spearhead you to the Champions League, go and win domestic cups as well. You have got to be the full package, the whole package and nothing less. It's quite interesting, something you mentioned there. It feels like this is a slight deviation from Arsenal's transfer policy maybe of a few years ago. You go back to the summer of 21-22 where they were signing players like Ben White, like Aaron Ramsdale, Martin Odegaard. The average age of the players they were signing during that particular summer was 22 years old. Suddenly, Andrea Berta comes into the football club with his experience in La Liga, new relationship with Mikel Arteta, and in his final 2 seasons at Atletico, the average age of the players he was signing was 26 and 27. And when you start to look at what Arsenal are doing, Kepa at 30, Zubemendi at 26, Viktor Gyokeres, should they get the deal done, he's 27, Eberechi as well, 27. It feels like this is a slight shift. But what you get from these players that are more experienced, a little bit older, are products that are ready to go now. This is not a project where we're building a team for maybe 3 or 4 years' time. This is a project that Mikel Arteta would say, we are ready to hit the ground now and go and win the Premier League.
I guess with every transfer, not just big money ones potentially like Gyökeres would be, comes with it an element of risk. I just want to have a look at this graphic. It is the power rankings of leagues. According to Opta League rankings, it is harder to score goals in the Championship than it is in the Portuguese league. Now, Gyökeres, we do know, has scored plenty of goals in the Championship as well. But more generally, should Arsenal fans have any concerns, given he has been so prolific, but in a league that is widely considered to be outside the top 5 European leagues?
I think Viktor Gyokere brings something that perhaps a number of other European players don't bring, and that's experience of the English game, both at Brighton, both at Coventry. He had a loan spell as well that didn't work out particularly well, but he understands the rigours of playing English football. So I think, first of all, you've got someone that understands the country. You speak to so many people. How many times do they say, well, we like a lot of players in Europe, but not all of them have got the ability to adapt to life in England. You've got to move across countries. You've got to learn a new language. You've got to let your family settle. You've got to find a home and a place where you feel comfortable. And then you've got to start playing your best football on the pitch, whereas Arsenal fans won't have that concern. The Arsenal hierarchy won't have that concern. Viktor Gyökeres has lived in England before, so he knows what that's like. So I don't think that will be an issue. The fact that he's a physical striker as well. I don't want to say he's going to do the same sort of things as Erling Haaland, but I feel like some of his characteristics are very similar. I feel like he has that ability to come into the Premier League, come into Arsenal, should the deal get done, and really have a huge impact. And you could almost see within the first 6 or 7 games of Arsenal season, Viktor Gyökeres has got 6 or 7 goals, and people go, Arsenal, why didn't you go and get this player or get this type of player 2 or 3 winters ago? Because we might have a few more bits of silverware in the cabinet. But I don't have any question marks about his ability, his goal scoring, or his physicality. I think he's the perfect product for Arsenal right now, and I could see him really fitting seamlessly into that side.
OK, so still work to do, of course, on a potential Viktor Gyökeres deal, but Arsenal have confirmed a signing today, and it is the Spain international, Martin Zubendi from Real Sociedad. What are the details of this one?
Yeah, so we understand Arsenal met the release clause for the 26-year-old midfielder, which was around £51 million. We believe he's going to sign a 5-year contract, although that has been dressed up as a long-term contract as far as Arsenal are concerned. What's quite interesting about this one, Dharmesh, is that, and you will probably know this following Arsenal so closely, they actually started this deal over 12 months ago. There was a lot of interest from the Premier League last summer. We know that Liverpool had made it quite clear they were willing to pay his release clause. But in the end, he decided to stay at Real Sociedad for another year. He has been, since then, Arsenal's #1 target for that holding midfielder role. Obviously, Arsenal have a relationship with Sociedad because they signed Mikel Merino in 2024. And whilst they were talking about Mikel Merino last summer, I think they also said we'd like to take Martin Zubendi. And Sociedad said, hang on a second, we're not selling you all of our midfield. But I believe, am I right in saying they presented them with a solution?
Yeah, they said, look, Merino joins in 2024. And this man here, this is the announcement video, of course. Zubemendi joins in 2025. But what cannot be underestimated here, Mark, is the role that Mikel Arteta played in convincing Martin Zubemendi to just wait another year and join Arsenal. It's understood that Arteta and Zubemendi, they created a really strong and instant connection. And I think Zubemendi was pretty grateful, and I think he was quite surprised at the approach that Arteta had and making him feel at ease to move outside of Spain for the first time in his career. We do know that players who play for the likes of Athletic Bilbao and Real Sociedad, it's always very difficult for them to leave those particular clubs. Merino, you mentioned him there. He also played a role. He was eulogising to Martin Zubemendi about the wonders of Arsenal as well. But I think those talks last summer, they have proved very pivotal, because Arsenal effectively did a pre-agreement rather, and sorted out this full transfer in March. And the reason that that is significant is because come June, Real Madrid, no less, started expressing an interest. But by then, Zubemendi's mind had been made up and Arsenal had that agreement. It's not just Zubemendi, it should be said, that is coming in at Arsenal. We're expecting a formal announcement soon that Christian Norgard will become an Arsenal player from Brentford, a deal worth £15 million. They're still working on a deal for the Valencia centre-back, Christian Mosquera. There's a gap in valuation with that one, but it feels like there is a deal to be done for that player who has 1 year left on his contract. So Kepa in, Zubemendi in, Norgard imminent, Gyökeres and Mosquera both pending, but they're not stopping there, are they?
No, they're very much in the market for wide left players, as well as the number 9, possibly a number 10 as well, or someone that can play that versatile attacking role, someone that can play left, right and through the middle. And one player is of interest, Noni Madueke of Chelsea. Interestingly, only started 2 games at the Club World Cup for Chelsea over the course of this summer. How much do we read into that for the 23-year-old? We know that he's a player on Arsenal's radar. He joined Chelsea in January 2023 for around £29 million and signed a 7.5-year contract. Started his career actually at Crystal Palace as a 9-year-old. He understands the English game, went abroad, come back again. He's very much an Arsenal target, and we've seen in the past that Chelsea and Arsenal are happy to do business with players as well, so that shouldn't come as a surprise. And Arsenal have been watching his development for a number of years. Interestingly, Enzo Maresca actually said not that long ago, if players are unhappy at Chelsea, they're free to go. Does that pave the way potentially for this deal to happen?
Yep, maybe. And it's not just Noni Madueke that Arsenal are looking at. You mentioned him before, Eberechi Eze. He's emerged as a primary target as well. And interest remains in Real Madrid's Rodrigo. That could cost a lot of money. But you know what? If they can get 2 of those, what kind of window will we be looking at as far as Arsenal are concerned? Look, just one other line to bring you, and it concerns Fenerbahce. They have announced that they have signed John Duran on loan for the season from Al Nassr, the Saudi Arabian club. Remember, he only joined from Aston Villa last summer, but he is going to be spending next season on loan at Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce.
Did he join in January? Was it in January?
January, sorry, yeah. Fantastic move for Jose Mourinho and Fenerbahce, but let's see how that one goes. Now, Chelsea's attacking options are growing and growing. After completing the signing of Jamie Gittins yesterday, we'll assess from this long list who could leave the club this summer. Stay with us. Yeah, welcome back to the Transfer Show. Before the break, we were talking all things Arsenal. Let's go across North London and Tottenham Hotspur. Mark, what is the latest on their pursuit of Mohamed Cudis?
Yeah, Thomas Frank very much in the market for a winger. Could it be this man, Mohamed Cudis? The latest information, actually, that we brought you on Sky Sports News a few hours ago, that Mohamed Cudis very much open to the move. In fact, he's gone as far as to say he only wants Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. You have to caveat there. There has been no interest really from anyone else of significance. Spurs had their first bid rejected, which we understand to be £50 million. The player wants to play European football. He does have a lengthy amount of time on his current West Ham contract. We understand that to be 3 years with a club option of another year. West Ham allegedly wants around £60+ million. We understand there is a release clause in his current contract, which is £85 million. Now, we talk about all eyes on Spurs. However, there is interest from Chelsea. Now, you're looking at me a bit puzzled saying, well, hang on, Chelsea in the market for yet another winger after what they've done already so far this summer. But yeah, another one.
But let's pick up on that, because look at this graphic. This is extraordinary, because these are the options that Chelsea have from an attacking perspective. I've counted 4, 7, 11, 16 attackers in the Chelsea squad at the moment. Who leaves, Mark?
Well, looking at that graphic, first thing that came to me was they've got 4 number 9s essentially. If you count João Pedro as a number 9, Enzo Maresca said a couple of weeks ago he wanted to go into the season with 2 out-and-out number 9s. So you'd imagine that Broja and Nicholas Jackson possibly would certainly be ones that might depart. Obviously, Broja's been out on loan, had his injury problems. Nicholas Jackson with a couple of red cards. There is interest in him from a number of sides in La Liga as well, so that will be one to keep an eye on. Out wide, Raheem Sterling went on loan to Arsenal last season. One of the sort of final players to come in under the Abramovich regime and Marina Granovskaya. One of those players, very highly paid, probably a little bit out of sync with the other players that Todd Boehly has signed with regards to wages. So you'd imagine there'd be an exit looking likely for Raheem Sterling. We know that there's been interest in Noni Madueke. We've been talking about just there. João Felix, I didn't even know that he was still a Chelsea player. He spent so much time out on loan. You'd imagine they'd try and find a permanent solution for him to leave over the course of this summer. It's fascinating when you look at how many options Enzo Maresca has within that Chelsea setup. You get the feeling that they have to do some business. They have to sell players now. And that's something that they've certainly been very good at over the course of the last few windows.
It certainly looks like, look, Neto, if we get, sorry, can you get that graphic up again? I was just about to read that. Oh, my word.
Less of us, more of the Chelsea boys.
I would say Neto, Esteval obviously is a new signing. They'll definitely be there. Palmer will be there. Gittins, of course, a new signing. George got a bit of an opportunity last season. Will they try and see if he can get more regular first-team football elsewhere, or will they continue to integrate him into that first team? And then Liam Delap, of course, and João Pedro. The rest of those names, you could actually see Chelsea, if good enough offers were to come in for those players, they would definitely have a look. Now, people will say Chelsea will probably need to start selling, because the question I keep getting asked when I talk about Chelsea is how they're seemingly able to spend all this money, bringing in all of these players. Do they actually need to sell?
They don't need to sell. Funnily enough, actually, Chelsea, despite all of their spending over the last few windows, are one of those sides that have quite a lot of headroom when it comes to PSR. Now, there are 2 reasons for that. First and foremost, they've sold a lot of players that came through their academy or represented 100% profit with regards to PSR. So players like Mason Mount, who went to Manchester United for the best part of £60 million, that was 100% profit, £60 million. And they've been very clever at selling players that have come through their academy. They've obviously been very wise with regards to what they've done and how they've structured their accounts, the businesses that they've bought and sold around Chelsea Football Club. We know they sold the women's team as well, which has proved to be very fruitful and successful with regards to the accountancy situation. So therefore, actually, Chelsea can still spend money and they still have room with regards to PSR. But of course, they'll probably be getting these players in with a view to, actually, we're going to sell X, Y and Z, and that's going to generate us 150 million in income. Therefore, we're very comfortable with our current situation. Winning the Champions League, getting to the latter stages of the competitions, playing in the Club World Cup. I think Carve, our football correspondent, said the other day that that's netted them so far around 60 to 70 million pounds just at this stage, now that they're in the semi-final. If they progress through to the final and win it, that will be around 100 million. So therefore, they're actually operating quite sustainably, sensibly, despite their extravagant spending in the market.
Right, we're going to talk Manchester United in just a moment. Just a line reaching us at Sky Sports News is that Crystal Palace are close to agreeing a deal to sign Borna Sosa, the left-back from Ajax. The player has agreed to join the club in principle, and the clubs are negotiating over a permanent deal worth around £3.45 million. So it looks like Crystal Palace on the verge of a signing the left-back Borna Sosa from Ajax. So let's talk now Manchester United. It's set to be an interesting week, shall we say. The main squad are due back tomorrow for pre-season training, but not everyone will be present. I think we've given it away who won't be, but just give us a reminder who won't be, Mark.
Yeah, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Alejandro Garnacho, Anthony and Tyrell Malacia. Those 5 players have been granted permission by Manchester United to delay their return to pre-season training. We understand the bulk of the first team will be back in tomorrow, the 7th, for the start of the brand new pre-season campaign. However, like you say, 5 players won't be there. Now, I guess we read into this. We know there's been a lot of noise and speculation about these players and a potential departure from Old Trafford. So the fact that they've been granted permission would suggest that they're saying, look, OK, guys, if you don't want to come back to Manchester United, if you whichever phrase or terminology you want to use, it's clear that the days at Old Trafford are numbered. So therefore, we're going to allow you time to facilitate the moves that you want, and then we will go from there. Of course, Manchester United don't want these players to come back and then the stories start to come out. They're training with the 21s, they're training with the youth team, they've got a separate training regime to the first team. Then there's the noise about, are they going on the pre-season tour? They're not with the main group, and it just becomes negativity that Manchester United don't need. So actually, it feels like quite a sensible move to say, here's the time you need, get the deals done, but whether or not, and this is the big question, can these deals get done within the next 4 or 5 days? Because these are all potentially quite big deals to make happen, whether it's because of wages, because of transfer fees, or because of the fees that Manchester United will attach to the players. You could go through individually, but it feels like it's going to be an interesting week or so for these players at Manchester United.
Yep, clearly there will be a focus at Manchester United on trying to get fees and permanent moves for these 5 players behind us. But another focus will clearly be Bryan Mbeumo and the latest on their pursuit of the Brentford forward. United expected to go back in with an improved offer for Bryan Mbeumo. Internal discussions are continuing at the club about what their next step will be regarding the pursuit of the 25-year-old. He's got 2 years left on his contract at the G-Tech Community Stadium. There is a feeling that United's last bid, their second bid, which was worth around £62.5 million, at £55 million initial payment plus £7.5 million in performance-related add-ons, is not a million miles away from what Brentford would want. However, just as important as the overall fee will be the structure of how that fee will be paid. Brentford, we think, want at least £65 million, with most, if not all of that £65 million guaranteed from Manchester United. So could be a really, really intriguing and interesting week or so at Manchester United, with the 5 players that we've been speaking about not coming back to training. They've been given a bit of leave, shall we say, to try and sort out their futures. And of course, will Bryan Mbeumo become a Manchester United player and become their second signing alongside Matheus Cunha? Of course, Diego Leon was another signing that they made earlier on today. Now, coming up, news from all 20 Premier League clubs in our Premier League wrap. Plus, ever wondered what it's like on the other side of a transfer? Well, we're joined by a communication expert to explain it all.
Hello, welcome back to the Transfer Show. Time now to go around the clubs. Dharmesh, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mark. Arsenal in advanced talks with Sporting over the signing of striker Viktor Gyokeres. Midfielder Martin Zubendi has joined from Real Sociedad for £51 million.
There's been no formal offers for Aston Villa striker Ollie Watkins amid interest from a number of clubs, including Manchester United.
Bournemouth in the market for central defenders following the departure of Dean Howson to Real Madrid and doubts over the future of Ilya Zabani.
Brentford are expecting a third bid from Manchester United for forward Bryan Mbeumo. They want at least £65 million.
Brighton focusing on midfield and forwards after signing 3 defenders in this transfer window.
Josh Brownhill is exploring all of his options. His contract at Burnley expired earlier this week.
Chelsea expecting a formal offer from Arsenal for winger Noni Madueke.
Crystal Palace are close to agreeing a deal to sign Ajax left-back Borna Sosa for £3.45 million.
Everton in the market for a right-back after Kenny Tete signed a new contract at Fulham.
Atletico Madrid are interested in signing Fulham's Alex Iwobi, but as of yet, there's been no formal offer.
Lille Swedish international defender Gabriel Gudmundsson has praised Leeds United amid reported interest in the player.
Liverpool have already brought in Florian Wirtz, Jeremy Frimpong and Milos Kerkez. but there could be more incomings and outgoings before the window closes.
Manchester City have saved up to £10 million following the sale of Kyle Walker to Burnley. Walker had entered the final year of his contract at City.
Manchester United are expecting offers for Marcus Rashford, Alejandro Garnacho, Jadon Sancho, Anthony and Tyrell Malacia after delaying those players returning to pre-season training.
Talks ongoing between Newcastle United and Nottingham Forest over the signing of Anthony Elanga after Newcastle's second offer worth £55 million plus add-ons.
Callum Hudson-Odoi's representatives have been in Athens discussing a new contract with Nottingham Forest officials. Hudson-Odoi's current deal is up next summer.
Sunderland are in advanced talks with Club Brugge over the signing of winger Chemsdean Talbi.
Tottenham Hotspur are expected to go back in with an improved offer for forward Mohamed Cudis after having a £50 million offer rejected.
And West Ham United are understood to want at least £60 million for the Ghana international.
Rangers are close to agreeing a loan deal for Wolves centre-back Nasser Giga. It's understood any deal would be a season-long loan, and that completes the Premier League wrap.
And if we go back to the top of that wrap, we mentioned earlier Arsenal are looking to bring in attacking reinforcements this summer, and a former Arsenal legend is bullish about Mikel Arteta's chances of getting a number 9.
Arsenal going to sign a striker this window?
Absolutely we are. We're signing everyone. This is our season. And I've said it for the last 3 seasons, and we've come second the last 3 seasons. But this is our season, because that's what it is about being a fan. You've got to stay with it. You've got to stay with it, and I'm staying with it, because Mikel is the man for us to take us to the top. Just take the last step.
What is missing, in your view, squad-wise?
Mentality. The last step is going to be the toughest one to take. Otherwise, everybody will be winning the league. You know what I mean? Obviously, we've been good enough over the last few years, but not quite good enough with the injuries, maybe with the lack of goals in certain instances with our team. But at the same time, you just got to keep going. You know, it's not easy win the Premier League. So it's great to be able to stand there and say, I've won the Premier League.
Yeah, those are thoughts of Ian Wright about Arsenal's chances of bringing in a number 9. Now, we've promised you a peek behind the curtain at clubs when it comes to transfers. Delighted to say we are joined by Ian Taylor, former Director of Communications at West Ham United and Queen's Park Rangers. Welcome along, Ian. Look, before we get into the job that you do and used to do with these clubs, I'd like to get your thoughts on Arsenal, because the big story of the day, it looks like they're getting closer to signing the striker that both Mikel Arteta and the fans have been so desperate for. Just put us in the shoes of a communications director at Arsenal, for example. How are you dealing with that situation? I'm guessing there will be noise from every corner, not least from the fans and the media.
Yeah, I think they're experienced guys at Arsenal in the comms team. I know them well. They'll be calm. I mean, it's a huge signing if it goes through, isn't it? Everybody's been saying that Arsenal need a number 9 for forever long now, but they'll be quite calm. They'll be doing their due diligence, I'm sure, as you do as a comms team. It's very similar to the way that the recruitment department will work. You do your due diligence on the player. They'll be probably making a few calls to other people in the industry just to work out what he's like as an individual, what he's like at dealing with the media. And then you'll really just be fielding calls from you guys 24/7 around the clock. I'm sure that their phones have been lighting up all day today. And then just really getting all your preparation done in terms of what it looks like if and when the player does come through the door, and you spring into action and get everything ready in your role as a comms director. What that looks like, I'm sure we'll discuss. But from the player unveiling to the first interview, making sure the messaging's super tight. Yeah, they'll be pretty calm, but if it does go through, it will certainly be a much anticipated signing, and what comes with that will be the additional hype that the media will try to create. But that will be internal as well. It won't just be the external hype. As a club, they'll want to make a big song and dance about it as well.
It feels like there's so much pressure on the media team these days, because the announcement videos seem to get more creative and you have to be a little bit different and so on and so forth. One player we've been speaking about on the show has been Mohamed Cudis. Now, a player you'll know because you obviously worked with him at West Ham. Can you give us a bit of an insight into what he was like as a person, as a personality, as a big player in that West Ham dressing room?
Yeah, incredible player first and foremost. Not that anyone will care too much on my opinion on that, but obsessed with the game, absolutely obsessed with football, to the extent I can recall on a pre-season tour of America last year, he wouldn't leave his bedroom. All he's focused on is just improving as a footballer. He absolutely loves the game, the people love him. The West Ham fans love him. You know, the Ghanaians love him as well. Incredible footballer. One of the strongest footballers in the Premier League for my money. But yeah, just obsessed with the game. Just wants to get better and better. Whether or not he does that at Tottenham, I guess only time will tell.
Ian, let's get into your role and what you specifically did. Just give us an insight into how a transfer window would work for a head of communications, a director of communications.
I think it would vary from club to club. There's probably no one size fits all really with this. Yeah, it's a challenge that the minute the window opens, the minute it closes, you know, your emotions are all over the place. But actually, if you think about it, you know, you guys will be calling me in the build up to the window, trying to suss out what positions that clubs might be one of the strengths. And then as soon as the window opens, you're throwing names at me, or certainly in the previous roles I've been at, throwing names at me 24/7. You've just got to keep quite calm. I mean, different heads of media will have different approaches. Some will perhaps not pick up their phone regularly.
Me and Dharmesh know about that all too well.
Yeah, I tended to take quite a lot of pride in making sure that I did pick up the phone, even if I couldn't answer the questions that I was anticipating. The least I would do would pick up the phone. And then really it's just, you know, communication. I mean, communication's obviously key in the role as a communication or media director, but communication internally is really key, whether that's with your chief exec or your sporting director. It's obviously different structures within different clubs. And I would say that, you know, your phone's glued to you during this period. You know, the WhatsApp groups are popping off left, right and centre with updates. And then it's also, you know, people think, oh, is it just the media side of it? It's not. There's so much more to it than that now. There's commercials, there's partnerships, there's a content team, you know, the social team. There's so much more to it. But yeah, you've really just got to have the phone with you 24/7 and try and give as many accurate steers, be that on the record or off the record, to the media as you can. That's always been my approach anyway.
Transfers, it feels like, and certainly me and Dharmesh could probably say exactly the same, it's moved on so much over the last maybe like 3 to 5 years, and it's so different the way it's covered now. How do clubs meet the challenges of that when the name may have been linked in the media, on social media, weeks, maybe months, or even, you know, longer than that, in advance of you getting the player through the door? Because you can only talk officially when the deal's done. You can't talk about speculation. You can't put on your official club website, oh yeah, we're in talks with this club and we're in talks with that club. You have to leave that to the media. How does that work for you as the head of comms in that situation?
I think you've just got to take ownership of the situation, haven't you? I mean, yeah, every club will differ, as I've said, in terms of the approach. But like you said, you know, you've almost got to ignore the speculation as much as you can. And your only focus is, you know, once the player is in the building, as a head of comms, and again, the structure will differ from club to club, but you'll probably get 60 to 75 minutes with the player. And that will differ depending on how much time you've got as well. You know, there are very rare occasions now, and I think the last one that I can recall is when Danny Ings moved to Aston Villa and nobody knew about that. Yeah. But nowadays, you know, you can't keep a transfer quiet. You've just spent the first half of the show talking about, you know, speculating about what might happen next in the Premier League. But yeah, you've just got to take ownership of it. Like I say, be as transparent internally as well, because, you know, you're in a privileged position inside a club that people will be coming to you for information. You know, what's happening? Is this correct? I've seen this in the papers this morning. Are we about to sign someone? So there's that level of confidentiality internally, but also externally as well.
Ian, fascinating stuff. Do not go anywhere, because after the break, we want to hear some of your most memorable stories from transfer windows past, including the day this man, Peter Odemwingie, parked his car outside Loftus Road. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Communications expert Ian Taylor is still with us. Ian, let's go back to your 20 years experience in this industry. Is there one particular moment that stands out for you in a transfer window?
Yeah, I think it's pretty iconic, and you guys are smiling because you probably know what's coming. But when Peter Odemwingie, I think it was 2013, when Peter Odemwingie just rolled up outside Loftus Road, when I was head of comms at QPR at the time. I remember we were doing a show, an internal club show, that was going out on YouTube, I think, at the time. And I got a call from my chief exec, and I was like, I'm live on air, but I was thinking, well, it's deadline day, I'm going to have to pick up. And he said, Peter Odemwingie's just turned up in the car park outside. And I was like, So is a deal agreed then? No, there's no deal agreed. He's just turned up. Obviously, call it what you want. I think the instruction from perhaps the manager, which was Harry Redknapp at the time, I believe, was to get yourself down to London. It's late in the day, get yourself down to London. But we probably meant to a hotel, not necessarily right outside Loftus Road.
In his defence, because I was following the story very closely and I was speaking to Odemwingie's agent at the time, and the story that's come out since then is that he had been told by West Brom as well, look, the deal is almost agreed. It is quite late. It's best you are in London so you're ready if and when this deal is formally agreed. Admittedly, he will probably say it wasn't the best idea to park outside Loftus Road, but aside of that, the whole deal looked like it was going to happen. There was even a shirt made up?
Me and you have spoken about this a number of times. The shirt was made up. Tried to find it before I came this evening, but I couldn't find it. But yeah, the shirt was made up. We didn't quite get to that. Obviously we didn't speak to the guy. You guys did, because you had a camera outside, and actually that was back in the day when the fans would gather outside the stadium as well. Yeah. So we couldn't keep it quiet, put it that way.
No, you definitely can't keep transfers quiet. That's for sure. One thing I'd love to ask you about. We speak about the deals that have happened. Are there any deals that didn't happen? Is that something that maybe happens a lot more than people realise?
I would have thought so. I think if you'd have asked, perhaps the current 20 head of comms in the Premier League at the minute, I'd have thought they'd all have probably at least one story, depending on how experienced they are. But yeah, there was one that stands out for me was Darren Ambrose, who at the time was at Crystal Palace. I think he was Palace club captain, and Neil Warnock was manager. Obviously, former Crystal Palace. Darren was a big part of his Palace side there. And everything was as good as done. The unveiling was done. We'd done the holding up of the scarf and the shirt. I think my colleague Paul at the time had conducted the first interview. The ink was as good as dry on the contract, and then it didn't happen. And at the time, I don't think it really came out, but now maybe it's a world first. But yeah, it didn't come out, but it does happen.
Let me tell you, earlier on today, I actually caught up with Darren Ambrose and asked him about this move from Crystal Palace to QPR and what happened. Here he is.
Crystal Palace, obviously, being in administration, I think the administrator, Brendan Guilfoyle, his name was, accepted a bid of, I think it was around $1 million, maybe $1.5 million at that time. So yeah, I went down there, agreed everything. I signed the contract. I had an interview in the dugout. I did the shirt pictures and stuff like that. And they found a loophole in the contract that paused it to a certain degree, and then Brendan Guilfoyle got wind of the new ownership taking over at Crystal Palace, and I think they didn't want to sell any of the assets and said no, let's get rid of the contract, let's say no to it. So they said no, and it was a strange time.
There you have it. I'm sure there'll be lots of stories, as you said, from all 20 head of comms in the Premier League. Just a final question, if you can be quick, Ian. Of all the managers that you've dealt with while you've been in the industry, which one's kept you on your toes the most? I
think I've worked with around 25, 30, so it's probably not a surprise when I say this name, but Harry Redknapp, he'd speak to you guys quite openly on deadline day, wouldn't he? The iconic shot of him outside his hanging out the 4x4 window. But yeah, you'd brief Harry, and then you'd like to think they'd listen to you on occasions, but deadline day and in the build-up to deadline day, it's all quite fraught, isn't it? And he'd obviously want to bring players in. The board might be saying something different. But yeah, they were quite testing times during my QPR days.
Love Harry.
Ian, absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on the Transfer Show. Mark McAdam, thank you for your time as well. The big story of the day, remember, Arsenal in advanced talks with Sporting over the potential signing of Viktor Gyokeres on the day that they announced the signing of Martin Zubendi from Real Sociedad.